little bit about Texas A&M going to South Carolina. Now, Texas A&M, 3-point favorites in that game. And it has been a bit of a tale of two resets, if you will, when we look at both these programs. South Carolina, they had a tough 3-game stretch to start the year. Georgia State, Georgia, Arkansas. Georgia State in itself is actually not really a tune-up game. I know the label or the branding doesn't really get you quite as excited as those other two programs, but they play good football. They played South Carolina tough. Then Arkansas and Georgia are just not really ideal opponents to play as you break in a new quarterback and a second-year offensive coordinator, a second-year head coach. Needless to say, they were happy to be able to get those two get-right games and then to beat Kentucky, got a bye week. Now they're hitting the reset for the second half of their season and to really, write the script the rest of the way how they want to. Spencer Rattler looked a lot more effective against Kentucky. The offense as a whole looked a lot more effective against Kentucky. More on that in just a second. Texas A&M also trying to hit the reset, hitting a bye week. And the last time we saw them, they took Alabama to the wire. Now, Max Johnson, who was previously quarterback one for them, is not going to be available the rest of the season. Haynes King sounds like he's also a touch dinged up. Doesn't matter. He's going to play against South Carolina, but he is now their guy. No more Anais Smith. He's done for the year. So they're trying to find a way to keep this plane in the air. It feels like from an injury perspective and even a little bit just from a outside looking in perspective, there is one engine currently out in this Texas A&M plane. Trying to keep it in the air, trying to keep it from spiraling. A win on the road against an SEC opponent would do a lot for that. So here are the hinge points for us in this game. Who can help their quarterback more? To put a metaphor to it, is this a family-style meal where the food is in the middle of the table and we all just take what we can eat, whatever we can handle, we handle, and that's how we get this done, how we finish the meal? Or is it eat at your own plate? And this is what you got. This is your serving size. If you can't handle it, that's too bad. That's going to hurt everybody. Which of those is it? Because that's going to be very telling as this game goes on. Spencer Rattler, like we already talked about, when they play complimentary football for him at South Carolina, he's a different quarterback. First 3 games of the year, we saw him feel like he had to be Superman, and his numbers suffered because of it. So far, 5 touchdowns, 8 picks. We'll get to that. But when he feels like he has to be the guy, when he says, either I got a ball out today or we're not winning, there's problems. The offensive line looked much better against Kentucky. They ran for over 100 yards. They protected him better, but that wasn't the case leading up to that game. Georgia gave him problems. Arkansas gave him problems. Georgia State even gave him some problems. And when that happened, Spencer Rattler started to press, made poor decisions. I know we're going to talk more about that in a second, but I think it's worth noting. If they can help him out, he's going to be okay. If they ask him to do everything for them, it's going to be a long night for South Carolina. And they got guys to help them too. Jaheim Bell, in my opinion, been wildly underutilized, a guy that can line up all over the place for them. You would hope he starts to see more of the football. But we'll see. Marshawn Lloyd's got to have a good game. Running back for South Carolina. If you could have him over 100 yards, you feel a lot better about your chances to win the game because then you keep the defense off balance. You give Spencer Rattler more time. You can do play action. Just so many things happen if they can allow some other prongs to be attached to this offense, especially in the run game. So that's first and foremost for them. Looking at Haynes King. He's a guy we've been fairly critical of on this show. Even when he was named the starting quarterback, we said he's a freak athlete, lots of potential. He worries us in the turnover department. That's a thing for him. It has been, and it has continued to be since he was actually benched after the Appalachian State loss. Max Johnson got the keys to the car. Then it crashed the car, but he got hurt. Haynes King, you're back in the driver's seat. No Anais Smith for this program hurts a lot. Now, I will say, Evan Stewart and the rest of that receiving corps had a huge day against Alabama. It won't show up in the stat sheet, but Evan Stewart actually had over 100 yards in that game. I mean, for Haynes King, rather, it won't show up in his stat sheet against Alabama. But there were so many plays that his receivers made for him that changed the complexion of that game. And I can remember one on the sideline where his receiver actually reached over the Alabama defensive back, was going to be an interception, and the A&M receiver turned it into a first down with that snag. It's got to be plays like that for him. It's got to be plays from this receiving corps where they give him some margin for error. It doesn't need to be a perfect throw every time for these A&M receivers to get it done. That's the story you want to tell on Sunday if you're an Aggie fan. Devon Achane. We've talked about him a lot on this show. He is the catalyst to this offense. Similar to what we said about South Carolina. If you can take some things off his plate, if you can allow A-Chain to get going and live in a 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4, you just have 1, more plays you can call. 2, you can play more to Haynes King's strengths that way. Because if you're king on Devon A-Chain, well, guess what? In that read option game, Haynes King's like a 4-4 kind of guy. He gets around the edge. Could be issues. So we'll see just about that. On the flip side of that, does either quarterback give it away? Been critical of both these guys for decisions they've made. And I could see a world where we get right to the 4th quarter, close game, back and forth, and an interception decides it. Just by nature of what we've seen from both these guys. Spencer Rattler, never been a matter for him of being physically capable, has so much ability. I mean, think about it. After that New Year's Six Bowl game where they beat Florida, Oklahoma was going to be, in the college football playoff picture. Oklahoma was, a surefire pick to play for the national title, #1 in the country. Spencer Rattler was going to be the first overall pick. He was going to win the Heisman, and then that deteriorated very, very quickly. A lot of that in part for Spencer Rattler's decision-making issues. It's not physical for him, but it is a matter of too much, I venture to say, self-belief, and a matter of too much want to pressing that ball downfield. Take what the defense gives you. 8 interceptions, 5 touchdowns, not a good look. It's not all his fault, but it's not a good look. Can you trend a little bit more towards that Kentucky game? You'll be okay. Haynes King, same song, second verse, right? He's not playing because of a lot of things he did poorly against Appalachian State. And then Max Johnson gets hurt, and they say, Haynes King, you're back in the ball game. I will just say this. We're going to call our shot a little bit right here. If Haynes King opens this thing up and has 2 turnovers, you'll at least start hearing some buzz about Connor Wegman. Will it happen in the game? I don't know. But you're going to start hearing a little bit about that really talented freshman from the state of Texas. Whole lot of stars next to his name, too. And he's just sitting on the bench holding a clipboard. This other guy in the game threw a couple picks. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I am saying the leash for Haynes King, I think there is a ceiling to that. I think there is not for sure a ton of rope he's being given right here. So some of that, too, is how do they manage him? Remains to be seen. Devon A-Chain going will make this an easier situation for him, but he has been known to put the ball in harm's way. We've seen it in the spring game, saw it against Sam Houston State, saw it against, you name it. We've seen it from Haynes King. It's kind of what he does, unfortunately. So if he can get the run game going for himself as well, maybe that changes things, but he's 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions on the year. It's not awesome. And like we already talked about, that number honestly could be a little bit worse with the decisions he's made. Which quarterback gives the game away? I think it comes down to the 4th quarter. I think it comes down to that. So here's probably the most important hinge point for us in this game. Does Beamer ball play a factor? And you know what I'm talking about. Shane Beamer, special teams guru. It's a thing with his daddy. It's a thing with him. Well, guess what? A&M, they're favored by 3 points. Their field goal percentage conversion rate is awful. 62%. That's good for like 103rd in the country. If I'm believing you're going to win the game by 3 points, I would have to see something a little bit better from that at the field goal unit. Looking at South Carolina, blocked 5 punts this year. They lead the country. They're 100% on field goal conversion. How much does that accentuate itself in this game? Now, maybe A&M's defense is just way better. Maybe Texas A&M's offense takes advantage of the 3rd down issues that South Carolina defense has had. But I'm telling you, if they can't get 3 when they get close to the end zone, when they kind of get in that red zone territory, if they can't get points, this thing could get really lopsided. Could get really interesting. Our prediction for this game, I think you have a case of 2 teams with different trends. South Carolina got that win against Kentucky, hit the bye week, they're trending up. A&M, ton of bad injuries, a lot of Jimbo Fisher slander, a lot of just issues as a whole around that program, it feels like. And they hit the bye week after the loss to Bama. And to me, that loss against Alabama kind of felt like their last kick. I'm not leaving this program for dead, but it did feel like that was their absolute best shot. They emptied the tank. They threw the kitchen sink at Bama, and it didn't hit. And so now you have a South Carolina program trending up and a Texas A&M program that I believe is trending down. I think it's an ugly game. I don't think either quarterback plays perfectly or mistake-free, but I do think that South Carolina wins this football game by a field goal. Beamer ball shows itself 27-24. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.